Chair Niska, you have House File 3395. I will move your bill before the committee, and if you could proceed and talk about your bill. And I'm sorry, this is being referred to public safety, correct?
If you say so.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Niska. Go ahead, proceed.
Thank you, Chair Davis, Co-Chair Cleve Warren, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present House File 3395, the Fraud Isn't Free Act. For years, members of our caucus have sounded the alarm on the systemic rot and the culture of accountability within our state agencies. And for years, we've been told that we were playing politics. But last week, the Walz administration's own Director of Program Integrity, Tim O'Malley, released a report that finally acknowledged the truth. The roadmap to program integrity finally admits what Republicans have been saying all along. This administration has presided over a, quote, compassion over compliance culture that effectively left the vault door wide open. We're told that processes are the problem, but processes don't backdate documents. Processes don't key cars, people do. And House File 3395 is about accountability for those people. People like a, quote, financial compliance lead at DHS, whose literal job was to ensure that rules are followed. Yet while on the taxpayer clock, he was caught on video in a vandalism spree against private citizens. In any organization with even a modicum of accountability, he would have been gone in an hour. But in this administration's 30% compliance culture, he remained on the payroll for months while he was under review. House File 3395 is about people like the behavioral health fabricators. Just 2 months ago, the legislative auditor revealed that multiple DHS employees, not just one or two bad apples, but a systemic group, backdated and fabricated documents to cover up their failure to oversee millions in grants. They didn't just fail, they actively misled auditors to hide their tracks. And House File 3395 is about accountability for people like Mr. Grumdahl, who for years oversaw the Housing Stabilization Services Program as Assistant Commissioner. Under his watch, that program exploded from a $2.5 million estimate, a forecast, to $100 million a year magnet for fraud. He is, as far as we can tell, the only person that this administration has ever fired for fraud, and it just happened to be 1 day before he was supposed to testify before the House Fraud and Oversight Committee. Director O'Malley's report admits that the state has been on notice about these vulnerabilities since 1977. That's 50 years of learning lessons while the checkbook stays open. House File 3395 aims to end that unpaid for failure. It does so by doing a few things. First, it requires salary cuts for failures. If a significant loss for funds happens under an agency's watch, the commissioner has to take an immediate 25% pay cut. If the tone at the top is the problem, as Director O'Malley says, then accountability needs to start at the top. It also requires budgetary discipline. We mandate a 10% administrative budget cut for agencies that fail to protect public funds. We have to stop rewarding incompetence with more oversight funding that bureaucrats use to hire more people like the individual we referenced earlier, keying cars while he's on the clock. And House File 3395 requires a 5-year ban. If an employee is found grossly negligent or involved in the backdating of documents to hide fraud, they should be banned from state employment for 5 years. We must end the practice of letting failed leaders resign only to show up in a different department a few months later. Director O'Malley's report is a long overdue admission that the Walz administration's 70% compassion, 30% compliance model has failed the people of Minnesota. And as Representative Bonner just said, the fraud is a result of decisions that we make here in the legislature. We need to make different decisions here in the legislature. Compassion for the needy is a virtue, but compassion for fraudsters, for car vandals on the clock, and for managers who fabricate documents is a betrayal of every taxpayer in our state. Fraud isn't free. It's time for the people in charge to start paying for it. That's what House File 3395 does, and I urge members to support it.
Thank you, Leader Niska, and I understand we have an author's amendment, the A2. I will move that before the committee. Can you tell us about the A2?
The A2 does two things. It corrects a technical cross-reference error, and it adds a 25% threshold to the benchmark of fraud that must be recouped. Again, trying to set a reasonable performance indicator for an agency that has seen fraud under its watch.
Any questions to the amendment? Chair Cleavorn.
Thank you. And members on our side of the aisle, I would recommend a yes vote on the amendment to allow the author to have the bill in the form that the author would like the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carried. Member discussion to the bill as amended. Oh, we have is there a Devin Bruce who would like to testify? Come on up here, Mr. Bruce. Bruce, state your name for the record and who you're with, and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Devin Bruce. I'm the Director of Legislative and Political Affairs for the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees, MAPE. We represent about 18,000 state professionals across all agencies, boards, and commissions. Apologies for my voice. I'm just getting over a cold, so I will try and grin and bear. Typically, we don't testify on what's clearly a messaging bill, but I had to make an exception given that the provisions in this bill, specifically Section 2, Subdivision 5, as well as Section 3, Subdivision 1, continue to perpetuate a false narrative that if fraud occurs, state employees are to blame, and I had to just make an exception to my normal rule. Not only does the process outlined in Section 2, Subdivision 5, violate employees' due process rights to a fair investigation that is protected in our collective bargaining agreements, it is unnecessarily duplicative of what is already required or permitted under state law. And it would also not only result in what appears to be the intention of the author, which is to address the lack of accountability for our agency leaderships who perpetuate these issues, as the O'Malley report identifies as perpetuating a culture of compassion over compliance, but it would unnecessarily fall on the wrong people. These prescriptive penalties will ultimately disproportionately fall on the rank and file staff instead of the commissioners or division directors that ultimately are responsible for the things that are highlighted in the report. Similarly, the clawback or the withholding outlined in Section 3, Subdivision 1 would also fall disproportionately on the very employees you would be relying upon to rectify the issues of noncompliance, not the top. While we understand that this proposal is highlighted to address just one aspect of the ongoing fraud issues for agencies, it also fails to recognize that the systemic issues that allow fraud to occur in the first place, particularly on the privatization, third-party contracting, as well as the chronic underfunding of state resources or staffing, as well as the outsourcing, particularly of the programs and its oversight. The more that the state continues to outsource and privatize state services and programs, the less control that we are able to exercise over it, as well as its oversight, as has been highlighted time and again in both the OLA reports and before this committee. So going forward, we hope that more time is also spent talking about these inefficiencies, highlighting some of the proposals that are coming from both the GOP as well as the DFL side that emphasize prevention and establishes guardrails that the committee has spent a lot of time on accountability and also remedies. And as the idiom goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and we ask that you move those forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. I believe we have another testifier on deck. Deputy Commissioner Mingy. And I know you've already introduced yourself, but if you would please remind us who you are.
Thank you, Chair Nash. I'm Anna Mingy, Deputy Commissioner at Minnesota Management and Budget. As I mentioned earlier, MMB is committed to working with you and with agencies across the enterprise to fight fraud. We want to speak to some specific provisions in the bill before you. So we appreciate the provision in the bill to repeal the sunset on the new payment withholding authority for state agencies that was enacted in the 2025 legislative session. MMB actually has a proposal to strengthen and make this authority permanent, and look forward to the discussion of this at Thursday's hearings, Co-Chair Cleaborn's bill. We do have serious concerns, however, that House File 3395 would deprive state agencies of the tools and the resources to take on criminals attempting to defraud state programs. The bill requires significant cuts and disruptions to programs, even in situations when fraud is initially suspected but not ultimately substantiated, or in situation where neither the agency nor its payee was responsible for a fraud incident and the agency's preventative controls caught the attempt. Agency central offices often house the functions and tools that support fraud prevention and compliance. And even a small number of fraud reports would severely hamper an agency's response capacity following successive 10% budget reductions, which could take months or longer to be restored. So for agencies with large programs, they could have 10 reports of fraud in a relatively short period of time, which would essentially eliminate their central office budget. We also worry that eligible beneficiaries of state programs might be harmed during the lengthy enrollment suspensions that the bill would require. The bill requires that enrollment in programs be suspended upon report of a fraud, and in large programs, that could represent month or years-long enrollment suspensions in major state programs. Moving to the employee discipline provisions of the bill, while we agree that allegations of misconduct or inadequate job performance should be taken seriously, these changes seem to undermine employee due process rights and contemplate discharging employees without an independent and impartial investigation. Finally, as I noted in the previous bill, we appreciate the interest in creating additional tools to inform the legislature on the topic of fraud prevention, but our twice-yearly forecasts are not the place for that analysis. So the administration, as you know, is bringing forward a package of proposals noted in more detail in the letter from Commissioner Campbell, and we hope they will be considered by the legislature over the course of this session. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Mingy. We will move to member questions. I don't have anybody on the list. Representative Lugar Nicolai, go ahead. We are going to get to a vote. We have 17 minutes left, so please be brief. You may want to turn your microphone on.
I am very sorry. That's rookie stuff. So Representative Niska, thanks for bringing this forward. I share Mr. Bruce's concerns about the language that he identified on page 3 and also on page 2. A question I have with respect specifically to subdivision 5 on lines 3.1 to 3.10 is, who makes a determination that fraud occurred? What's the actionable determination?
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Chair Nash, and thank you, Representative Lugar Nicolai. Good to see you. The agency head has directed that under certain circumstances, under certain finding, that they need to discharge the employee. So it doesn't provide for any other mechanism other than a direction to the agency head to do that.
Representative Lugar Nicolai.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Nash. So now, on lines 2.15 to 2.17, the mere act of returning an investigative report to the Legislative Audit Commission triggers the actions set forth in subdivision 5. Isn't that correct?
Representative Niska.
It triggers the applicability of subdivision 5.
Yes, it says they must.
Representative Lugar Nicolai.
Yes, it says they must take the actions required under lines, or subdivision 3 to 5, which includes the firing of people. Is that
Representative
correct?
Niska.
Thank you, Chair Nash. And it requires the firing of a person, quote, whose intentional or negligent act or failure to act abetted the fraud or allowed it to occur. So that would require a determination by the head of the agency that that a person has committed some intentional or negligent act whose or failure to act abetted the fraud or allowed it to occur. I think we would all agree that anyone who is employed by the state who is doing intentionally or negligently allowing fraud to occur should be fired.
Representative Lugar Nicolai.
Well, Chair Nash and Representative Niska, you know, my day job, I work a lot of times with people where there's a dispute about fact about both whether something happened and what the nature of the penalty ought to be. That's kind of my whole brand. And so my question is, under what circumstances can this decision-making be challenged? Is it through a grievance process? Is there, what would be the cause of action in a court if an
Representative
individual
Niska.
disagreed?
Thank you, Chair Nash and Representative Lugar Nicolai. This doesn't change the overlay of any applicable processes that would be in place for anyone who is fired for cause as a state employee.
Representative, any further questions?
Quick question, which is, the agency head retains the ability to make the ultimate determination. That's, as I understand it, your understanding of this bill. What if they are the individual who is under investigation or the subject of the report returned by law enforcement that is all by itself a trigger for action?
Representative Niska.
Then the governor probably should fire him, which hasn't happened, unfortunately.
What, I'm
Okay.
sorry, Chair Nash, one more.
Representative Lugar Nicolai, last question, if you
Yeah,
might.
yes.
Thank you.
What is, okay, but they have a series of responsibilities themselves if they believe somebody else is also part of this issue, because negligence is one of your triggers, not just intentional fraud. And so if they think somebody was negligent because they forgot to read an email or they didn't pick up a voicemail and that was somehow characterized as an important omission, they are in the hot seat and they also retain the ability to fire subordinates. Is that correct?
Representative Niska.
If the governor chooses to leave people in place who the governor should fire, I think that's something that we should all be concerned about, what's happened over the last several years. But yes, absolutely. I think commissioners, the point of this bill is to create another mechanism for commissioners to be held accountable, which unfortunately we have not seen happen as billions of dollars have flowed out of our state coffers. Those of us who have come from the private sector know any functional private sector organization would have had hundreds of people fired in a billion-dollar scandal, including probably the CEO of that organization. And that accountability has not happened, and that's why House File 3395 hasn't occurred. If you think there are other changes that need to be made to the due process overlay of our state employees to make sure that some state employees could be fired who haven't been fired for reasons that I think we would all agree that state employees should be fired for, then I'm open to adding additional things in here to change other parts of the law. This doesn't do that. It just says to department heads, this is cause to fire somebody. If their active or negligent acts led to the state being defrauded, that is cause to be fired. I hope we can all agree on that.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and could the first testifier make his way back up to the table?
Mr. Bruce, if you would come back up.
Hopefully his voice will hold out. When I'm at home and visiting with folks, I think fraud is the number one topic that's brought up. And one question that we always hear is, has anybody been fired? And especially for things like backdating documents, things like that. To your knowledge, how many, if any, state employees have been fired over these fraud issues over the past couple of years? Any numbers on that?
Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Anderson. I don't have that. I wouldn't know that. I'm on the legislative side, that was a business rep side.
Representative
So
Anderson.
I wouldn't have that.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Well, who would have that and how could that be made available to the committee?
Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Anderson. That would be probably MMB. Would have
Representative
those.
Anderson, would you like to ask MMB to come forward?
Yes, please.
Ms. Mingy, if you would come forward. Or phone a friend. And if the friend would introduce themselves for the record, we can proceed. Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed to answer the question.
Good morning, Chair, members. Blake Chafee, Deputy Commissioner, other Deputy Commissioner, Enterprise Employee Resources at Minnesota Management and Budget. My sincere apologies, Chair, Representative. Could I get the question again from you?
Representative Anderson.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Wondering, because we get asked this a lot, how many, if any, employees have been let go, been fired because of their lack of duties, especially concerning backdating documents, things like that?
Mr. Chafee.
Chair, Representative, good question. I think first and foremost, MMB does not maintain discipline data for the enterprise. So that is not information that I have right now. Disciplinary data, including discharge for cause, is something that's maintained individually by agencies, by appointing authority. Discipline up to and including discharge is issued following a finding of fact, right, related to specific employee conduct that's found to be in violation of statewide policy, agency-specific policy. So in the event that there's an allegation of employee performance or misconduct that, for instance, as per the conversation today, that's led to fraud being perpetrated, a formal investigation would follow, and if substantiated, the employee would be disciplined as appropriate, up to and including discharge. But to the primary question, that is not data that MMB maintains.
Representative Anderson, follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, again, just wondering if it's available any place, and to what Representative Niska mentioned, certainly in private business, I think that would happen.
Sure.
Not so sure it's happened here at the state, and if those numbers are available, there's a lot of people wondering what's happening and why people have not been let go for not doing their duties and allowing things to happen that certainly shouldn't be happening with state tax dollars.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Representative Joy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Niska, for this bill. This, again, transparency. This is accountability. This is exactly what Representative Paul Anderson was just saying about, in my district, same thing. Has anybody been arrested? Has anything happened? You know, we just heard earlier in a bill that we talk about how they took fraud actions and tried to prevent these things from happening, and the Republicans refused, and the Democrats passed it and did all those great bills. We had OIG bill we're trying to get through, and the Democrats want to gut that. That bill passed in the Senate, 60-7. 7 Democrats said no to it. If we're serious about taking on fraud, then there are members over there that carried that bill, you think would move that bill forward without having to gut that bill and change it so that Governor Walz is in control. The CEO should not be in control no more. We have an issue here. This is accountability. This is exactly what Minnesota's looking for. Holding people. And you know what? If they are afraid of getting fired, they'll quit doing what they're doing. You gotta hold people accountable. Private sector does this all the time. When we have a bookkeeper stealing from us, we don't let the bookkeeper hire the auditor. That doesn't happen. This is just so easy, but all we get on the other side is constant fighting against, you guys are trying to shadow fraud, and we did this. No, you didn't. Let's move forward and get this done so fraud is stopped this year. Thank you, Representative Niska, for this bill.
Okay, we will go to Chair Cleaborn, and then we're going to concluding thoughts from the author, and then to a vote. Chair Cleaborn.
Thank you, and I'll just make sure we have a roll call vote.
Roll call having been requested, roll call will be granted.
Thank you very much. Representative Niska, Section 3, where you unallot 10% of the agency's budget, is that correct? It's 10%?
Representative Niska.
That is correct, on a certain trigger, correct.
Chair Cleaborn.
Thank you. Could you please tell me how many Minnesotans would be impacted by the loss of services if an unallotment is created by 10% of any agency?
Representative Niska.
Well, the savings in fraud that we will get if we have agencies preventing fraud instead of allowing billions of dollars to go out the door, I think would be the biggest impact of this bill.
Chair Cleaborn.
Thank you. So you don't have a number, is that correct?
Representative Niska.
This is assuming some sort of future fraud happening after passage of the bill. I hope we would not have to assume that would be happening after the bill.
Chair Cleaborn.
You know the old statement about assumptions. So is there anything in this bill that actually outlines a preventative measure for fraud?
Representative Niska.
Certainly. So there's a requirement that the agency create a corrective action plan and meet the benchmarks in that corrective action plan. And frankly, I would think that we as a legislature would expect agencies, even without a finding of fraud, to actually be performing, to be hitting performance benchmarks in order to get the money that we're taking from Minnesota taxpayers and giving to agencies. And so when there is reason why that corrective action plan requirement is triggered, then yes, we expect the agencies to have a corrective action plan and to meet certain benchmarks.
Chair
Chair.
Cleaborn, briefly?
Thank you. So the corrective action plan is reactive, not preventative. Have we seen a fiscal note on this bill?
We,
Representative Niska.
thank you, Chair Nash and Co-Chair Cleaborn. We did request a fiscal note. It was supposed to be ready for, by today, but MMB asked for more time.
Chair
And
Cleaborn,
I look forward to seeing the savings that we will get from this bill.
Chair Cleaborn, concluding statement?
Thank you very much. Okay, what time is it? I can't, there's a glare on the clock. I can't see the clock. Okay, so we have no fiscal note. This bill has no preventative measures. And Representative Niska, when you, before you came to this bill, I level set for the committee the actions that were passed in 2023, 2024, that were actual preventative measures that I believe you yourself voted against, including pre-award risk assessments, more detailed agreements, mandatory reporting, progress reports, investment in oversight, and extensive grant requirements. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would ask our members to vote no on this bill. It's not ready, it's not preventative, and it is actually punitive and harmful to the Minnesotans who are both suffering from fraud, which we all agree should not occur, and it is punitive in that you just unallot their services. So, members, please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Niska, conclusions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this important bill. Let's be clear. If the answer to this were more resources, if the answer to this problem were the preventative measures that we just heard about, we wouldn't be dealing with this problem. For years, the legislature has given these agencies more and more resources, every possible resource. We gave them internal auditors and compliance leads like the guy who was keying Teslas on the clock. And what did we get? We got a 70-30 culture where compliance is an afterthought. This bill is going to ensure that the next time a program explodes, the agency doesn't get a budget increase to fix it. They get a mandate to prioritize compliance or lose their funding. They get a mandate that we have accountability. Minnesotans demand accountability. Please vote yes.
Thank you, Representative Niska. And with that, Representative Davis renews his motion to send House File 3395 as amended to public safety. The roll call having been requested, the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Nash.
Nash votes aye.
Representative Cleaborn.
Cleaborn, no.
Representative Davis.
Aye.
Representative Bonner. No. Representative Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Representative Clardy.
Clardy, no.
Representative Freiberg. No. Representative Jones excused. Representative Joy.
Yes.
Representative Koznick.
Yes.
Representative Kraft.
No.
Representative Lugar Nikolai.
No.
Representative Quam.
Yes.
Representative Sexton.
Yes.
With a count of 7 ayes and 6 noes, the bill is not advanced to the next committee. And with that, members, we are adjourned.